Number 5. Well, first and foremost, if you were looking for any proof that the government definitely knows more about aliens than they let on, how about from the mouth of the three-letter organizations themselves? The CIA released a tweet in 2014, wow, obviously was meant to be taken in a joking manner, but still pretty illuminating, saying that throughout the 50s and 60s, they estimate that 50% of all sightings of unexplained aerial phenomena and UFOs were simply the CIA testing new aircraft. Out of context, the CIA admits they were behind 50% of all UFO sightings is an extremely attention-grabbing headline, and probably what I should have named this video. Would have got you to click better. And it is an attention-grabbing headline. At the time they were testing the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, codenamed Dragon Lady, which was able to fly at altitudes thought unreachable by a one-manned aircraft at the time. We know the CIA will always be a little bit more technologically advanced than they're willing to let on. That's just the nature of shadowy governments. But the conspiracy theorist in me has to wonder, is it even just the littlest bit possible that them releasing this could be a misinformation campaign? I mean, this is just what they're willing to admit, right? Who's to say what they won't admit? What if they put stuff like this out there so the next time you see something odd in the sky, you just dismiss it thinking, oh, that's just the CIA testing airplanes, instead of the more logical, reasonable answer that it's an alien spacecraft observing you from up above? And what if all I'm saying is just wild speculating and tinfoil hat level conspiracies because I'm trying to get views on video? It's more likely than you think. But them admitting they're responsible for most UFO sightings intones to me that they're aware of a lot more UFO sightings that are reported. Makes you wonder how much they research them all. Do you think they look at every blurry cell phone camera video posted to Reddit, or just the really serious ones that make the news? I'm hoping to get some answers someday, and I have a feeling that some of those answers are in this video. It won't all be wild speculation, I promise. And hey, if you want to see more alien stuff, click through. We've got boxes full of declassified documents, NASA stories, and videos that are just out of this world. Get it? So stay subscribed and stay scared, and I'll see you there. Number 4, the Guy Hoddle memo. So it's a pretty much an open book secret that the three-letter agencies have known about aliens in some way or another since they've started writing things down. They don't hide it or pretend to hide it anymore, which is nice. They finally admitted that Area 51 even exists for the first time a couple years ago, so we could all use a little openness in our day-to-day. Let's take a look at one of the FBI's most talked about and most viewed documents, the Guy Hoddle memo. And despite being one of the most seen FBI memos, it's but a single-page document that was never followed up on. Well, it sounds like we should follow up on it. Guy Hoddle was the head of the FBI field office in Washington, and his report was addressed to the head of the FBI, one J. Edgar Hoover. The contents of the report were simple, but shocking. It detailed the descriptive encounter of an agent making a physical sighting of what they believed to be a UFO. It's dated 3 years after the Roswell incident, but it was reported in New Mexico for what it's worth. Here's a quote from the memo. The saucers were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. Now, if you ask me, that is almost too perfect, isn't it? I mean, the memo lines up nearly perfectly with the stereotypical, cartoon description of aliens being little gray or green men flying around in flying saucers around New Mexico. The memo goes on to read that the agent claims they had found the saucers because an FBI high-powered radar in the area had detected it, and this radar detecting it had interfered with the controlling mechanism of the crafts. But despite all of this, which really seems like it's the paper trail screaming, proving, hey, aliens are out there, you should go check them out, the memo ends by saying no further evaluation was attempted, and the Hoddle memo was never followed up on, presumably crumpled up and thrown away. Director Hoover, I guess, thought it wasn't worth his time and disregarded it, leaving it now as nothing more than an incredibly odd piece of history. Number 3, Project Blue Book. Well, here's the thing. Even if Director Hoover at the FBI didn't see fit to look into the Hoddle memo, there were definitely other organizations that were looking into UFOs. Maybe it's not just the FBI, but I can tell you that the Air Force sure was. If you're an experienced UFO enthusiast, perhaps you're already very familiar with Project Blue Book, but if you're not, hey, let's talk about it. The project was officially started in 1952 and terminated in 1969. And the project had 2 main goals. 1. Confirm if UFOs were a threat to national security. And 2. Scientifically analyze any UFO-related data. Well, that seems like pretty strong evidence to me. Not that the project existed to see if UFOs are real, but rather to determine if they were a threat. That seems like they're writing and admitting like, no, we know, we just want to know if they're scary. And is that not the most human sentiment you've ever heard? If you guys learned nothing from Avatar, we gotta be making friends with aliens, not being afraid of them. In the years of Project Blue Book's operations, a stunning 12,618 reports were filed and collected. And those are just the ones that are officially recorded. Of those, interestingly, there were an individual 700 reports that were found to be unexplainable after research and intense analysis. Isn't that interesting? Now, a great number of these reports turned out to be the U-2 spy plane that we mentioned all the way back in point number 5, if you remember that far away. But that still leaves 700 completely unexplained sightings of aircraft that the USAF looked into and could not find answers for. The project was ultimately shut down in 1969, with the official explanation being given that, number 1, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security. And number 2, there has been no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. And number 3, there has been no evidence indicating the sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial vehicles. Oh, well that sounds like kind of a bit of a bummer, doesn't it? They went through thousands of documents and declared that none of it was worthwhile evidence to suggest that aliens exist. Well, it's a shame that we're never going to mention any more things of the Air Force on this video, or any more things about pilots encountering aliens. I mean, that really blows. I mean, except for our next point. Take a listen. Number 2, the UAP report. Very recently, the Pentagon declassified a series of documents known internally as the UAP report, and it was basically the sequel to Project Blue Book, the streaming follow-up. And yeah, every single time we have an alien video, I'm probably going to have a little meltdown where I talk about how last year the government confirmed that they researched UFOs and that's what they spend your money on, and no one seemed to care about this, they just slipped it under the rug. I guess we were kind of busy with other stuff, but still, what happened to our curious minds, people? We learned that the various three-letter agencies in the States had been researching, analyzing, and scouting out sightings of UFOs, mostly because pilots just could not stop reporting them during training ops. One pilot, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, claims that he saw hundreds, maybe thousands in his career as a Navy pilot. One of the more famous ones is the Tic Tac sighting, referring to a massive oval-shaped aircraft that was spotted by 2 pilots. This one comes from 2004, and the 2 veteran pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, were the ones who called it in. 2 respected, trustworthy Navy veterans. Their report reads that the objects were spotted almost out of nowhere, some 80,000 feet in the air, which would then descend rapidly towards the Pacific Ocean, then stop at around 2,000 feet and hover in place. Very normal airplane behavior. They would drop out of radar range or shoot directly up into the sky on a 90-degree angle. For weeks, Navy crew was watching these objects trying to determine just what they were. They certainly weren't American in origin, and they weren't recognized by any other organizations. To confirm what they'd seen, Slate and Fravor were sent off on a reconnaissance mission to get eyes on it. What they found was more confusing than either of the 2 men could ever have imagined. They reported back that the object they were seeing was like a giant Tic Tac, white-colored, oval-shaped, and 40 feet long. Far too big to be a drone, and it didn't maneuver in a way like an aircraft would, making erratic movements, staying out of reach of radars, as if it knew it was trying to stay undetected. The pilots flew towards a rendezvous point to touch down, and presumably cracked their windows open and asked each other, hey, what the hell was that? But as they flew towards the LZ, the UAP flew past them at a breakneck speed and then disappeared entirely. When questioned about it, Fravor said that it was unlike any aircraft he had ever seen in his life. I mean, that guy flew planes like every day for years, so he probably knows a thing or two. Number 1, non-terrestrial officers. Now, if you're like me, you're probably frustrated that you know the truth is so close within grasp behind closed doors. To know in your heart of hearts that there are answers to the unexplained just out of sight would drive you to do something crazy. Now, for most of us, all we can do is sit and speculate and maybe watch some lovely top 5 videos of a very handsome host talking about aliens. But for one Gary McKinnon, a Scottish computer programmer, he decided that wasn't enough and decided to take matters into his own hands. McKinnon was a genius computer hacker and had his sights set on the biggest prize he could imagine, going after NASA's servers to see if they had any hidden alien data just waiting to be found, in what was described as the biggest military hack of all time. Quite the conversation starter. Why would anyone risk their career, freedom, and livelihood on this? Well, Gary wanted the truth and he would do anything to get it. McKinnon claims he had insider knowledge that confirmed the US had suppressed anti-gravity technology reverse engineered from UFOs and free energy energy. In his own statement, McKinnon said, "This should not be kept hidden from the public when pensioners can't even pay their fuel bills." Yeah. Well, so what did McKinnon find? Well, he didn't find proof of the reverse-engineered UFOs that he'd been hoping for, but he found quite a lot that was remarkably illuminating. First up, a 400-page document called the Disclosure Project, outlining testimonials from government agents across multiple branches of service, reporting all their sightings and scientific analysis on unexplained flying objects. That would already be pretty impressive, but on top of that, McKinnon also managed to find a document entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers. Non-terrestrial officers? What? What? Is that just fancy talk for astronaut? Well, the document was a spreadsheet listing the names of NASA officers and employees who were to be transferred to new ships or to serve on board space stations. But here's where it gets weird. McKinnon noted that the names of these vessels listed did not appear to exist in any other database. And if that wasn't enough, McKinnon claims in his searching he saw images of aircraft that did not resemble anything he had ever seen. One in particular he describes as looking like a massive cigar-shaped craft floating over the northern hemisphere that did not look man-made. One wonders if that's the same as the Tic Tac ship. He said he was in a shock looking at the image and didn't think to take a photo. Now, after pulling off an unbelievable fast one on NASA, McKinnon couldn't resist a bit of cheeky cyber vandalism and edited NASA's website homepage with a bit of text that read, "Your security is crap, by the way." Now, I'm not endorsing hacking a government website, but that's one of the coolest things I've ever read. Now, I don't know how much you know about the United States government. Boy, do they just love it when you prove to them that they have a massive security breach in their most classified data. Presumably the only thing that kept McKinnon from being strapped to a car battery and thrown into a black van by the men in black was the fact that he lived in Scotland and was kind of hard to get a hold of. He was arrested by UK police, and the United States government tried their absolute hardest to have him extradited to the States to be tried for the fullest extent of his crimes. Honestly, I bet it was the note. I bet that's what really pushed them over the edge. McKinnon managed to avoid extradition and was protected by the Crown for serving out what would have been a 70-year sentence. But presumably he's not planning any road trips to the States anytime soon, and I'm sure NASA has improved their security just a little bit.
Number 5. Mars. The goal of the Mars exploration program is, quote, to explore Mars and to provide a continuous flow of scientific information and discovery through a carefully selected series of robot orbiters, landers, and mobile laboratories interconnected by a high bandwidth Mars-Earth communications network. Okay, yeah, that's great and all, but like, are you selecting which pictures you share with us? Cause we'd love to see what the planet looks like. In 4K, please. I know I would. I think it's funny that we can see an infrared cloud into the vast distances of space with the new Webb telescope, yet 4K pictures, still none of the other side of the moon. Huh, that's weird. I mean, it's a lot closer if we wanted to start there, you know? But Mars is great too. We've all seen the pictures of right angles and impossibly formed canyons and craters from Perseverance to get an idea of what exactly the red planet looks like. Yeah, it's red. And sandy, like PEI sand. But we're starting to see some weirder and weirder stuff from NASA as it collects scientific information up there. Like, say, this potential crash landing site. I mean, if it was a crater, bigger hole. If it was an asteroid, bigger hole. Nope, just this thing that looks exactly like what it'd look like if you whipped a rock into sand. Just kind of skips and, you know? This would happen.
Buzz Lightyear to Star Command, we've crash-landed on a strange planet.
I don't know, I'm not saying this stuff's covered up or anything, but like, I feel like if we have the equivalent of a bad garage door security camera, you know? Doing like a long 345-degree shots and only showing us more sand. This thing could be in the Gobi Desert for all we know. We'd never know the difference. Show us the bases, where's the monoliths? Also, one lens? One lens? Like, where's the X-ray, the infrared, radio waves? Let's go, people. We've all played No Man's Sky. Where's the 4K and the jetpacks, dude? Number 4, Paul Hellyer. Okay, now on to some more scary stuff. Hey, also, if you dig the channel, make sure you like and subscribe, or comment down below. Do you think they're releasing this late report to Congress or what? Just kinda hoping everyone forgets it's due and just moves on? Anyway. Flying on up to Canada, who's been involved in UFOs for a very, very long time. The RAF and RCMP have been on top of this stuff, I'd say even before the Americans. Paul Theodore Hellyer, August 1923 to August 2021. First off, rest in paradise, sir. This man has done more for us up north than we'll ever know. This man has and will play a huge role in the UAP phenomenon as a whole. I encourage you all to look into Paul here a little bit deeper. An engineer, a politician, writer, commentator. He was the longest serving member of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada. In 1967, Hellier inaugurated a UAP landing site in St. Paul, Alberta. The town built it as a Canadian Centennial Celebration project, as a symbol of keeping space free from human warfare. In 2005, Hellier made headlines by publicly announcing that he was a true believer in the existence and was an invited speaker at the conference in Toronto where he shared that he had seen a UFO during his career. In 2007, Paul was demanding world governments to disclose alien tech that could be used to solve problems of climate change. Hey, that's pretty cool. In an interview in 2014, Hellier said that at least 4 species of aliens have been visiting Earth for the last 1,000 years, with most of them passing by from another star system, and of course, those living with us on Earth from Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moons. Awesome. Just for some credentials here, Paul ran for the federal election like 12 times. Yeah, Air Force, Navy, former Minister of National Defense. Guy was 98, people. Do some homework. He's easily the highest ranked true tinfoil hatter we know of. 98 years that man graced our planet. I wonder what he knew. Number 3, government. Speaking of disclosure and how we're all kind of right in the middle of it, right now, we go to Congress. It's odd because we obviously joke and have a good time and make light of the whole situation, but like, whether you like it or not, it's happening. First off, I'm scared. I'll admit it, I'm scared. I scared my stuff into this stuff. I discovered John Greenwald in like the 9th grade and it's been rabbit holes ever since, let me tell you. When Congress starts talking about other planets and aliens, it starts mocking up some public citizen hearings with ex-Congress members. It's starting to get a little scary. But these public hearings, they whip this bad boy out. The cream of the crop UFO video that they say they have. The portrait mode, the 4 seconds of a circular something. Like, that's it? Apparently it's taken from the cockpit of a US fighter jet. May 17th, 2022, members of the United States House Intelligence Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counter-Proliferation held Congress hearings with top military officials to discuss the reports of UAPs. Did you miss it? Yeah, it was at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Yeah, really important stuff. Also, how come they put like the grainy 90s filter on the video? Dude, like we make videos here, we're not gonna notice that? This thing's grainier than the first episode of the Golden Girls. The first public Congress hearing in over 50 years, and this is it. Again, there's some mock citizen hearings that were way more convincing and way more informative from way more reliable personnel. Also, better quality. Interesting, huh? But again, why wasn't all this shared when it originally happened? The government says, yeah, there's like 14 things we can't explain, yet try and solve the easy ones. Apparently there's like 144 more classified videos to just rummage through. It's been a big month, I will say that. 16 candidates for the new UAP NASA program, report late from Halloween, weather balloons, airborne clutter, foreign surveillance. What are they going to tell us this week? Number 2, Dave Foley. And we come to yet another great Canadian, Mr. Dave Foley. Those of you who aren't familiar with the North and what we produce up here, Dave is a Canadian actor, comedian, director, producer, and writer. He created Kids in the Hall, a Canadian gem, and also an avid believer in the phenomenon. He took to Twitter a couple months ago and caught the attention of many. Foley tweeted, quote, "After years of interest in the UFOs without ever seeing anything, I saw something. This is a drawing of what I saw. I was with a friend who I'll let decide if he wants to be attached to this. It moved silently, at great speed, hovered and pulsated with light." End quote. Now this ship does look a lot like what we've seen in the past reports, so who knows, Dave may actually have seen a UFO. Maybe these aliens are just fans of A Bug's Life. Guys flick, man. Maybe they just want an autograph, I know I would. He continues online, quote, "Many people who have encountered the phenomenon are afraid to discuss it because of the thoughtless and uninformed derision it inspires. Many who discuss it have had their lives ruined by that derision." I should point out, the white lights were on the front of the craft, assuming it was moving forward, and those lights pulsated separately from the body of the craft, which also pulsated. We felt like our emotions were being tamped down. We were unnaturally unresponsive to what we were seeing. In a way, I'm still experiencing that. End quote. Hey, it's all fun and games when the celebs get involved, isn't it? But up here, Canada's been involved for a long time. More publicly, too. Just last week, a report said that Canadians were briefed last year on what's what with the phenomenon. A document released a couple days ago say the February briefings were delivered by multiple members of the Pentagon UAP task force, and attending was 10 Canadian defense officials, including the Royal Canadian Air Force and military intelligence. Right? Like, not just comedians and sketches, you know? These people have been around a while and read some stuff. Paul Hellier type stuff. And number 1, Tom DeLonge. Come on, this is an easy one. And probably the most confusing yet reliable source of them all? I know. Trust me. Blink-182. Hey mom, there's something in the back room. Well, there actually could be. Remember enjoying their song Aliens Exist before believing that aliens actually exist? Yeah, the lyrics hit a bit different now, don't they? Cut to 2017, former Blink member Tom DeLonge, now the co-founder of To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. Sounds fun, right? Until you see the panel. Military generals, astrophysicists, psychologists that have been studying this stuff since the 50s. It's the real deal. But how can a rock star be the head of this phenomenon? Well, he's into aliens, and that's an understatement. Susan Gao, the Pentagon spokesperson who made the public statements on disclosure, said that the Navy had confirmed that those 3 videos that are so wide in circulation are authentic recordings made by naval aviators. And guess who got all those out to us? Quote, everyone still looks to the United States government as having all the resources. We've been waiting around as scholars and researchers for many decades, hoping God that one day the government would come to us on what this is. This whole thing could be answered by the government. We're just waiting for them to come help us out with some of the research. This situation that happened is what we've been hoping it would do, so it can ignite more intellectuals to get into this race and help us figure out more about it. End quote. I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. Physicists, astronauts, that's who we want to hear from, you know? And just for dessert, here's what Tom posted on his Instagram. You tell me what's up.
Number 5 on this list is the Navy UFOs. This is one of the most famous alien or UFO encounters the humans have had in the last few decades. Reader's Digest says, when it comes to extraterrestrial life and making contact with those from outer space, everyone has an opinion. Some think it's all a hack, some are open to speculate, and others still are entirely taken with the tales and stories as old as time, cameras poised and tinfoil hats at the ready. UFOs have fascinated and confused us for years, as each new flying saucer or hovercraft sighting makes national news and splits us into 2 camps. While it's easy to debunk individual stories, it's way harder to argue with the US Department of Defense. In videos leaked back in 2007 and 2017, the Pentagon has aimed to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real. In the video, unidentified objects are seen spinning and hovering in the air and above the water, while 2 Navy pilots remark in shock and confusion over the 2 oblong disc-shaped objects. So you may be thinking, well, how did the government try to hide it if they were the ones that actually released it? Well, they did release it themselves, but we have to remember that that was only after the videos had been leaked. In 2007 and 2017, these videos had made their way to the public without the government's stamp of approval. So everyone was freaking out and speculating on what the heck this thing could be and why we hadn't heard anything about it. What the heck it is, I don't know, but why we hadn't heard about it is because the government had chosen not to tell us. The only reason that they inevitably released the videos is because they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. They were found out. They were exposed when these videos were leaked. At that point, they could either continue to vehemently deny something that was clearly pointing towards naval activity, or they could fess up and release it themselves in hopes of taking less public backlash. They opted to do the second one because, in their words, they wanted to clear up any misconceptions by the public. That, however, is code for, we got caught and we think that releasing it now would be better for us in the long run. If it was up to them though, these never would have seen the light of day. Which then makes you wonder, how many other videos like this are out there that you and me, we just don't know about? Number 4 on this list is the O'Hare incident. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport had quite the interesting experience back in 2006. Reader's Digest says, on November 7th, 2006, United Flight 446 was about to depart from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport when a dozen United Airline employees spotted an odd metallic craft hovering over the gate. The employees reported that it hung in the air for several minutes before finally shooting up at breakneck speed into the clouds. The strangest part? The UFO did not register on the airport's radar despite all the witnesses. The FAA declined to investigate, chalking it up to a weather phenomenon. A weather phenomenon. Seriously? Yeah. Alright there, guys. Also, for those who don't know, the FAA stands for the Federal Aviation Administration, and they're a government-run agency that deals with pretty much anything that flies. So don't get it twisted, guys. This was definitely the government deciding that they didn't want to do anything with this incident, or at the very least, they didn't want the public to know about it. But you would think that they could come up with a better excuse than a weather incident, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've ever seen a weather incident cause odd metallic things to hover in the sky. Number 3 on this list is the 7 strange crafts. So this one is really interesting because the government did address it, but they definitely didn't chalk it up to being what a lot of people thought it was in Aliens. Reader's Digest says a 1952 incident where 7 unidentified objects appeared over secure airspace near the Pentagon was captured on film. The crafts were registered on radar, and jets were immediately sent to investigate these suspicious strange crafts. However, when the American jets approached that airspace, those 7 objects disappeared from the radar. When the jets landed, the objects returned to the radar screen once more. President Harry S. Truman was notified, and Air Force Intelligence Director General Sanford held a press conference saying that there were reports made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It's this group of observations that we're attempting to resolve, but there was no resolution. So we kind of just heard from the government that they were on it, but then didn't really hear anything after that. There was no resolution, or at least there wasn't one that was released to the public. Could I believe that they did actually discover something here, and they just decided that telling the public wouldn't be the best course of action? Absolutely I could. In fact, I almost guarantee it. I highly doubt that the American government would have seen this stuff and then after one pass with the jets just been like, well, alright, guess nothing's there, and then call it quits. No, they definitely would have kept investigating and looking until they discovered something. Telling the public about that, though, probably wasn't in the cards. Number 2 on this list is the Richard French incident. So this is definitely one of the bigger cover-ups in UFO government history. Reader's Digest says in the 1950s, it was Lieutenant Colonel Richard French's job to explain away UFO phenomena for the government. There was only one problem. Lieutenant Colonel French actually saw alien ships with his own eyes, reports the Daily Mail. At a citizen hearing on disclosure in 2013, the then 83-year-old man told the truth for the first time about what he saw as a young man in the waters of St. John's, Newfoundland, 2 UFOs that had crashed and sunk in the water, and aliens trying to fix them. They succeeded and took off. He didn't mention UFOs in his report at the time. How's that for a freaky government cover-up? Yeah, so that's about as government cover-up as we can get, guys. My guy legit says UFOs saw aliens and specifically omitted it to save face and not panic the public. I guess the guilt and also just the whole story had been eating away at him for decades though, and eventually he had to come clean and tell the public. Too little too late though with a story like this, because we never got an opportunity to investigate these aliens or talk to them or anything. Or at least, that's if he's telling the truth. For all we know, he's still leaving some parts of the story out. Only the government and Richard really know what happened. And number 1 on this list is the unexpected visitor. A man named Rick Porcels, who lived in Texas, got a very unexpected and unwanted visitor late one evening at his home. The story goes like this. In 2008, an unfathomably large aircraft hovered above Stevensville, Texas. Many people in the community saw it, and according to the Mutual UFO Network, a pilot named Stephen Allen reported that the unusual aircraft was flying at an estimated 3,000 miles per hour and was being chased by fighter jets. Then, a man named Rick Sorrells said he saw the same thing while hunting. Later, Sorrells says a strange man knocked on his door and said, "Son, we have the same caliber weapons you have, but we have more of them. You need to shut your mouth about what you saw." Can you imagine getting a knock on your door and it being the government basically telling you that if you say anything, you're gonna die. Yeah, that is definitely an unexpected and unwanted visitor if you ask me. So not only were they threatening citizens, I also didn't hear any reports from the government about that jet that was flying behind the UFO. You'd think that if a jet fighter were deployed to chase down an enemy aircraft in friendly airspace, the public should probably know about it to stay safe. But nope. Absolutely nothing. Total radio silence from the government. How many other times have they gone to someone's house and threatened them like this that we don't know about? How many people have been intimidated by the government to stay silent? Really scary question that, honestly, we might not even want to know the answer to.
Number 5. Gordon Cooper. Major Gordon Cooper was an astronaut and flying ace of considerable renown, with more than a few accolades to his name. Being the first man to spend a full 24 hours in space solo, and the last American to ever spend a solo orbit around the planet altogether. Besides these lofty accomplishments, he was also very vocal about his belief and insistence of life beyond the stars. He'd experienced many strange things over his career. First, when he was an Air Force pilot in 1951, he says on a routine flight over West Germany, he encountered 3 flying metallic saucers following his plane. The incident was reported and nothing was done. But this would be far from the last strange encounter Cooper would have. In 1963, after orbiting the planet, Cooper was returning home when he noticed a glowing green orb following his capsule, which he described as ethereal. The object was picked up by a radar tracking station in Australia. But most bizarre about all of this is that when Major Cooper touched down and returned home, reporters from NBC told him they were explicitly barred from asking any questions about the unidentified object he'd experienced. Beyond bizarre, isn't it? Cooper outright says he believes higher-ups covered it up, saying on record that in the USA every day our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us. And there are thousands of witness reports and a quantity of documents to prove this, but nobody wants to make them public. Why? Because authority is afraid that people may think up God knows what kind of horrible invaders. We have to avoid panic by all means. Now, the implication in his words seem pretty direct, that he thinks the government covers it up because they think we can't handle it. I think we're ready. I mean, after the last couple years, I don't think there's any weirdness you can really throw at us. And if you're looking for great weirdness and great horror content every day, well, I can hook you up with that. All you gotta do is subscribe. Number 4. Ryan Graves. Now, for most of us, seeing a UFO would probably be the highlight of our life, or at the very least our week. But for Lieutenant Ryan Graves, a 10-year Navy veteran, seeing a UFO became a routine. On an interview with CBS on their 60 Minutes, Lieutenant Graves said that he saw UFOs every single day for years. He recounts his first encounter, where he was stunned, saying he saw a mysterious flying object trailing around him, with no markings on it, no exhaust plume, no trail of any kind. He described it as a flying black cube that appeared to have a sphere located inside of it. The pilots in Graves' squadron would report seeing these mysterious cubes constantly during their training exercise, even coming dangerously close to crashing into them and causing them to be labeled a threat. Graves said initially they were skeptical about them being alien craft, which is reasonable, and that his men had been assuming they were highly advanced drones being tested clandestinely. But as time goes on, Graves changed his tune, instead advocating for the discussion to be had about UFOs and if there's more to know out there. He wants to centralize the conversation around UFOs not being an outlandish conspiracy theory, but more of a security concern. But are they really, even? I mean, surely if there was alien life capable of provoking a conflict, they would have done it by now, right? Or perhaps these crafts were just scouts, or something else entirely. All I want to know is the truth. Number 3. Cosmonaut Kovalyonik. When you leave the atmosphere, you should expect to see some things you can't explain. I mean, it's up in space. Well, for Vladimir Kovalyonik, he was in orbit in the summer of 1978. He saw something that would alter his perception of reality forever. He claimed that he saw some floating entity following around the space station, reporting a glowing green ethereal orb, exactly like what Major Gordon Cooper claims to have seen following his capsule. Much like Major Cooper, that wouldn't be the only supernatural extraterrestrial experience Kovalyonik experienced. In 1981, on another voyage through the stars, he saw something unimaginable. He claims that he saw something floating around, resembling a barbell. He said that it was transparent, but that it looked like it had a body inside of it. It did something that is very difficult for me to describe in the point of view of physics. He describes the entity exploding magnificently, combusting in a ray of golden light, which he described as beautiful. After the explosions, there was a cloud of white smoke and a small sphere, but as they continued orbiting, the smoke and sphere vanished entirely. He goes on to say that he doesn't think whatever he saw was artificial, and that it must have been biological in some way, that it moved in a way that intoned life of some kind. Kovalyonyk was surprised that his fellow cosmonauts did not seem willing to entertain the possibility of it being life from outside the planet, outright dismissing his claims. He's been quoted saying, "Many cosmonauts have seen phenomena which are far beyond the experiences of Earthmen. For 10 years, I never spoke on such things." When he returned home, there were brief investigations that possibly what Kovalyonyk saw was little more than a missile test. And after these brief investigations, the case and the sighting was dropped entirely. Number 2. Half the planet. Now it's frustrating, I'm sure, to think that there could be answers for the unexplained out there, and no one is willing to share them with us, out of fear we'd react badly. For one Gary McKinnon, this unknowing was simply too much to bear, and he decided to get the answers the only way he knew how, the easy way, hacking directly into NASA's servers to get at their data. Why would he do that? Why would he risk his whole life and career for this? For the truth, directly. From McKinnon's own mouth, he said, "I knew that governments suppressed anti-gravity UFO-related technologies, free energy, or what they call zero-point energy. This sort of thing should not be kept hidden from the public when pensioners can't pay their fuel bills." So did he find anything worth risking his freedom for? Well, according to Mr. McKinnon, yes he did. He claims to have found something called the Disclosure Project, a 400-page document outlining testimonials from all kinds of government agents reporting their sightings and findings on unexplained objects. Fantastically too, Mr. McKinnon claims that he got a hold of a document entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers, listing the names of NASA officers who were to be transferred to new ships. However, McKinnon stated that he could not find the name of any of these ships existing anywhere elsewhere. McKinnon, as well, presumably incredibly satisfied with his findings, vandalized one of NASA's websites, leaving behind a message saying, "Your security is crap, by the way." Utterly hilarious, but it did come back to bite him, as the White Hat hacker was swiftly arrested and was to be extradited to the United States to stand trial there. Now, the 56-year-old managed to avoid extradition. He still lives in the United Kingdom today, but he's definitely going to want to avoid visiting the US anytime soon, as I sincerely doubt they've forgotten about that little bit of vandalism. Number 1, the UAP report. Well, it's hard-pressed to find any more clear-cut proof that the US government has been researching aerial phenomena and UFOs than the US government outright admitting they've been researching UFOs and aliens for years and releasing all of the documents about it, kind of quietly sliding it underneath the door. Now, the actual idea of the report sounds significantly more exciting than it actually is, sadly. It's still very, 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 very cool, don't get me wrong. But the Pentagon's UAP report isn't quite the smoking ray gun we would hope it is. It doesn't outright blatantly confirm anything. It doesn't point to one flying saucer with a big red circle and say, "Hey, this is an alien. We know this is an alien. We asked for its name. It came from Sanghelios and it comes in peace." Instead, the report highlights the hundreds of documented official reports of strange occurrences pilots and other government agents have seen in their service. The report confirms it's something we're looking at. It's done wonders to legitimize the talk around UFOs. First and foremost, to change the nomenclature from UFO, unidentified flying object, to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, including the possibility of non-technological flying things. The report focuses primarily on whether or not repeated sightings of mysterious crafts are a threat or dangerous, which is a bit reductive, I think. Why do we have to assume aliens are a threat to us? Now, this isn't the first time the government has put direct resources into researching the possibility of alien life. Most famously probably is Project Blue Book, a CIA task force that ran from 1952 to 1959. But this is the first time an agency has been so outright forthcoming about sharing their findings with the public, renewing interest in UFO and UAPs. It's a very, very strong path forward to legitimate discussions, finding, and who knows what else.